Most people know hearing loss can affect cognitive health. You've probably seen a headline about it, and most people know that depression and anxiety are bad for your brain over time. Those links have been known for quite a while now. But here's what almost nobody is talking about. What happens when you have both? Because hearing loss and depression don't just run on separate tracks, they feed each other. And when they do, the risk to your brain isn't just double, it potentially compounds in ways that researchers are just now starting to understand.
If you're navigating hearing loss or struggling with ringing in your ears, then you've come to the right place. The All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast is your go-to source for expert insights, real stories, and cutting-edge solutions in hearing health. We'll dive into the latest advancements in hearing healthcare, explore groundbreaking treatments for tinnitus, and offer practical tips for better hearing. Here to help you tune into a world of better hearing, here's your host from Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus, Dr. Layne Garrett.
I'm Dr. Layne Garrett, founder of Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus here in Utah. Today, I want to walk you through what the science actually says about how these three conditions are connected: hearing loss, depression and anxiety, and cognitive decline, and what that means if you or someone you love is dealing with any of them. All right, let's start with the three connections individually because each one is well established. First, hearing loss and cognitive decline. The 2024 Lancet Commission, the world's largest ongoing review of dementia prevention, identified 14 modifiable risk factors for dementia. Hearing loss in midlife accounts for 7% of preventable dementia cases globally. That makes it the single largest modifiable risk factor on that list. And a 2024 meta-analysis pooling over 1.5 million participants found that for every 10 decibels your hearing gets worse, increases your dementia risk somewhere between 4 and 24%. That's not a small effect. That's real. Researchers have a few solid theories about why, and the evidence behind them is getting stronger. When your ear stops delivering clear signals to your brain has to work harder to try to understand that degraded sound. And researchers call that cognitive overload. Imagine trying to follow a conversation at a noisy family dinner when you can only catch every third word. Your brain is filling in gaps, guessing, compensating, and you're doing that constantly for years, and that has a cost. You're burning cognitive resources on understanding speech instead of storing memories, making decisions, and processing the world around you. Over time, the auditory cortex may actually shrink from lack of stimulation. Second, depression and cognitive decline. Also from the 2024 Lancet Commission, depression contributes another 3% of preventable dementia cases. And a large Danish study of nearly 250,000 people found that those diagnosed with depression had significantly elevated dementia risk across all age groups: early life, midlife, and late life. The biological explanation involves cortisol, inflammation, and stress-related changes to the hippocampus, the part of the brain most involved with memory function. Third, hearing loss and depression. This is the most underappreciated link here. A 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Neurology found that people with hearing loss have significantly elevated odds of depression compared to their normal hearing peers. And the relationship is also consistent across ages and ethnicities. The mechanism isn't mysterious. Hearing loss isolates you. Conversations become exhausting. You stop calling friends because phone calls are hard. And you avoid going out to eat with friends or family because background noise becomes overwhelming. You find yourself nodding along at family dinners because you've just given up trying to follow the conversation. That social withdrawal compounds into loneliness, and loneliness compounds into depression. Now here's where things get important and where most audiologists are not connecting the dots for patients. A 2022 study published in the Journals of Gerontology looked at 1,820 older adults and examined what happened when hearing loss and depression showed up together as opposed to either condition alone. And the results were striking. Having hearing loss alone was associated with a 54% increased risk of developing dementia over 10 years. Having depression alone was a 135% increase, but having both together, a 191% increased risk compared to having neither one of those. I want to be careful here. This is observational data, so we're talking about association, not proven causation. But the signal is clear. The combination isn't just additive, it appears to amplify risk beyond what either condition would cause on its own. Why? There are a few plausible ideas here. 1. Hearing loss leads to depression through social isolation. Depression then independently damages cognitive reserve through its effects on the hippocampus and the stress response. So you have two pathways simultaneously eroding brain health. Or both conditions create cognitive load, one from decoding the degraded sound, the other from mental burden of depression itself. And third, depression is associated with reduced physical activity, increased inflammation, and poorer self-care, all of which further increase dementia risk. What this means practically is depression in someone with hearing loss isn't just a mood issue, it's a brain health issue, and it should be treated as such. A 2021 paper in the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry put it plainly: hearing loss is the single largest modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline, and it's associated with developing major depressive disorder, which is itself a potent independent risk factor. They called it an increasingly important triad: hearing loss, depression, cognitive decline, all feeding on the others. In our clinic, we see this all the time, and what frustrates me is how rarely it gets addressed as a connected picture. A few years ago, I had a patient, and I'll call her Carol. Her family had been pushing her to get her hearing checked, but honestly, that was not worrying her. What worried her was that she felt like her memory was slipping. She'd noticed that she'd withdrawn from going to book club and was skipping her grandkids' events, telling her husband she was just tired. Her doctor put her on antidepressants about 6 months before I saw her. When we tested her hearing, she had a moderate high-frequency hearing loss, significant enough that in any kind of background noise, she was catching maybe about half of what was being said. Her speech and noise scores were also poor. She wasn't losing her memory, she was missing pieces of conversations, and her brain was exhausted from trying to fill in those gaps. We got her fit with some hearing aids, and we verified that they were properly set up with real ear measurements. And over the next few months, we had our normal follow-up visits. And what we saw was that the social withdrawal had reversed. She went back to book club, and she told me at her 3-month follow-up that her husband said she seemed like herself again. Now, did the hearing aids fix her depression? No. She continued working with her doctor on that. But addressing the hearing loss removed a major driver of her isolation, which was feeding the depression, which was compounding her cognitive risk. You can't treat one and ignore the others. And here's what bothers me about hearing care is typically delivered. These conditions are being treated in silos, and they shouldn't be. Most clinics are not asking about mood. They're not talking about depression. They're not having conversations about cognitive risks. They fit hearing aids and send the people home. That's not comprehensive care. That's incomplete care. And for patients sitting at the intersection of hearing loss and depression, it's leaving the most important part of the picture unaddressed. And there's one more piece worth understanding. Treating the hearing loss appears to help more than just hearing. The 2022 gerontology study found that hearing aid use appeared to specifically reduce cognitive impairment risk in people with both hearing loss and depression, more than just in the broader population. That's important. It suggests that for people sitting at the intersection of both conditions, hearing treatment may be doing double duty, reducing auditory cognitive load while also restoring the social connection and the communication that depression tends to strip away. This doesn't mean hearing aids are an antidepressant. They're not. And for someone with significant depression or anxiety, hearing aids can be one part of the comprehensive picture, not the whole thing. But leaving hearing loss untreated while trying to manage depression without recognizing the connection between the two, that's not good enough. So here's the bottom line. Hearing loss, depression, and cognitive decline are not three separate problems that happen to show up in the same person. They're a connected system. Hearing loss can drive depression through social withdrawal. Depression is an independent risk factor for dementia, and when the two occur at the same time, the risk to your brain is compounded beyond what either condition alone would suggest. That means comprehensive hearing assessments do matter. Mental health screening in people with hearing loss also matters. Treating both conditions seriously, not in isolation, matters. And if the clinic you're working with is not having that conversation with you, it might be worth asking why not. I'm curious, has anyone ever connected your hearing and your mood in the same conversation? Your doctor? Your audiologist? Anyone? Drop a comment below. I read every one, and honestly, I want to know how often people are actually getting this information or not. If you want to go deeper on comprehensive tinnitus and hearing loss treatment, including how we factor cognitive health into our approach in our clinic, the Learning Center link is in the description below. And if you're here in Northern Utah and want an evaluation that actually looks at the full picture, not just a tone test done in a quiet booth, you can schedule it in one of our locations. You can find a link to do that below as well.
A world of better hearing and relief from tinnitus is within reach, and we're here to help. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast right now and join us on the journey to clearer sound and a richer life. Thanks for listening to the All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast with Dr. Layne Garrett. We'll see you next time.